Have you ever had a boss who makes you feel like everything you do is wrong? You work harder, you stay quiet, you try to keep them happy, but somehow the criticism gets worse, the expectations keep changing, and eventually you start thinking, maybe I should just fight back. But here's the problem. When you have a toxic boss, fighting back emotionally can actually make your situation worse. You send the angry email, you confront them in front of coworkers, you finally lose your patience, and suddenly, the conversation is no longer about what your boss did. It becomes about how you reacted. That is why the smartest way to deal with a toxic boss isn't always to fight. It's to play strategically. In this video, you'll learn how to recognize the games toxic managers play. Protect your reputation. Document yourself without looking paranoid. Set boundaries without creating unnecessary conflict. And prepare an exit strategy if things don't improve. Because sometimes, the person who stays calm isn't weak. They're the person who understands the game. And if you want more videos about workplace psychology, career protection, office politics, and the hidden rules that control your career, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. The first mistake people make with toxic bosses is trying to become the employee their boss finally approves of. They think, if I work harder, they'll respect me. If I never say no, they'll trust me. If I prove myself, they'll stop criticizing me. But toxic management doesn't always work that way. Sometimes, the problem isn't your performance. The problem is the system your boss has created around you. 1 week, you're told to move quickly. The next week, you're criticized for not being careful enough. You finish a project early. They ask why you didn't do more. You take initiative. They ask why you didn't ask permission. You ask for clarification. They say you're not independent enough. This creates something extremely dangerous, a moving target. And when the target keeps moving, you can spend your entire career trying to hit it. That's why your first goal should not be, how do I make my boss like me? Your first goal should be, how do I make my work clear, measurable, and defensible? That's a completely different mindset. Instead of chasing approval, start chasing clarity. Ask, what is the priority? What does success look like here? When do you need this? What should I deprioritize if this becomes urgent? Those questions force vague criticism into specific expectations, and specific expectations are much easier to manage than emotional criticism. This is where the thumbnail comes in. Don't fight back. That doesn't mean become passive. It means don't give your boss an emotional reaction they can use against you. Imagine your boss says, you always make things more complicated than they need to be. Your natural reaction might be, that isn't true. You never give me enough information. Now the conversation becomes an argument. But imagine you respond, can you give me one specific example so I can understand what you'd like changed? Now, something interesting happens. You've moved the conversation from emotion to evidence. If they have a legitimate concern, they have to explain it. If they don't, their criticism becomes much harder to defend. This is one of the most powerful workplace skills you can develop. Don't defend your identity. Clarify the situation. Don't say, I'm not lazy. Say, which deadline did I miss? Don't say, I'm not difficult. Say, which part of my communication would you like me to change? Don't say, you're treating me unfairly. Say, can we walk through the expectations and how my performance is being evaluated? You're not surrendering. You're removing emotion from the battlefield. And that's important because workplace conflicts are rarely judged only by what happened. They're also judged by who appears more composed. Now let's talk about something that can quietly protect your career. Documentation. If your boss constantly changes instructions, gives contradictory feedback, denies previous conversations, or blames you for decisions they made, start keeping professional records. But don't create a dramatic case against my boss folder and tell everyone about it. That's not the goal. Your goal is simply to maintain a clear record of your work. After an important meeting, send a short follow-up, just confirming the priorities we discussed. I'll complete A by Wednesday and B by Friday. I'll pause C happy until we receive the additional information. That's it. No accusations. No emotional language. No, just documenting this because you keep changing your mind. Never do that. Keep it neutral. You're creating a professional trail, and this does something psychologically important. It makes you less dependent on memory because toxic workplace situations can become confusing. You may start asking yourself, did they actually say that? Was I really responsible for this? Am I remembering it wrong? Clear documentation removes that uncertainty, and if a serious performance conversation happens later, you have something much more valuable than an emotional argument. You have dates, deliverables, decisions, and evidence of communication. Here's something important. Not every difficult boss is toxic. A demanding manager may have high standards. A toxic manager may create fear, confusion, humiliation, favoritism, manipulation, or constant instability. There's difference. A difficult boss might say, "This work isn't good enough. Fix these 3 things." You may not enjoy hearing it, but at least the feedback is specific. A toxic boss might say, "You're always disappointing me." That's completely different. There's no measurable standard. There's only personal criticism. Another example, a difficult boss might say, "I need this by Friday." A toxic boss may tell you on Friday morning that it should have been finished Thursday, even though nobody told you, and this distinction matters because the solution is different. If your boss is simply demanding, you may need better communication, prioritization, or performance. But if the environment is consistently manipulative, unpredictable, humiliating, or retaliatory, you need to think beyond simply working harder. You need a career protection strategy. Another mistake people make with toxic bosses is giving them too much personal information. You don't have to tell your manager everything. You don't need to explain every personal problem. You don't need to reveal your financial situation. You don't need to tell them exactly how desperate you are to keep your job. And you definitely don't need to tell them you're planning to leave before you're ready. Why? Because information creates leverage. A healthy manager may respect your vulnerability. A toxic manager may use it. If they know you're desperate for the paycheck, they may assume you'll tolerate more. If they know you're afraid of losing your job, they may push harder. If they know you're emotionally attached to a promotion, they may use that expectation to keep you working without giving you anything concrete. Professional doesn't mean cold. It means having boundaries around what your employer needs to know. You can be friendly without making your entire personal life available. Now let's talk about boundaries. Many employees think setting boundaries means saying, "No, I'm not doing that." Sometimes that's necessary, but there's a smarter approach in many professional situations. Instead of, "I can't do that," try, "I can take that on. Which of these current priorities should I move back?" That's a powerful sentence because you're not refusing the work. You're asking your manager to make the trade-off. For example, your boss gives you 3 urgent projects. Instead of silently working late every night, say, "I can complete all 3, but I won't be able to maintain the current deadline for Project A. Which one should take priority?" Now the decision belongs where it should. Belong with the person assigning the work. This is especially useful because toxic bosses often create impossible workloads and then criticize employees for not completing everything. Don't automatically accept an impossible workload. Make priorities visible because if everything is urgent, eventually nothing is manageable. This is one of the most dangerous mistakes you can make. You have a terrible day with your boss. You go to a coworker. You tell them everything. Then another coworker asks. You tell them. Then someone says, "You should report them." Now suddenly, 5 people know about your conflict. And here's the problem. You don't control where that information goes. Workplaces have memories. People repeat things. Screenshots exist. Messages get forwarded. And sometimes the person you trusted today may become the person sitting in your manager's office tomorrow. That doesn't mean you should isolate yourself. Build relationships. Find trustworthy people. Seek legitimate support when necessary. But don't turn your workplace into a courtroom where you're constantly collecting supporters. Your goal isn't to build a team against your boss. Your goal is to protect your career, and those are very different things. Here's a strategy most employees completely underestimate. Don't let your entire professional reputation depend on one manager. If your boss is the only person who knows what you do, that's dangerous. Build visibility through your work. Collaborate with other teams. Keep track of measurable achievements. Volunteer for projects where your contribution is visible. Build professional relationships across the organization. And most importantly, know your value in the market. Keep your resume updated. Keep your professional skills current. Know what people with your experience are earning. Know what roles exist outside your company. You don't need to quit tomorrow. In fact, you may never quit. But there is a psychological difference between "I have no choice" and "I have options." That difference changes how you behave. When you know you have options, you're less likely to tolerate manipulation just because you're afraid. There's one sentence you should be extremely careful with. "Fine, I'll quit." Don't say it in anger. Don't use resignation as a threat, because the moment you make that threat, your manager may call your bluff, and now you're forced to either leave or look like someone who makes empty threats. If you're considering leaving, prepare privately, update your resume, improve your skills, build your network, explore opportunities, understand your finances, then make your decision from a position of strength. The best exit strategy isn't "I quit because I can't take this anymore." It's "I have another option, and I've decided it's better for my career." That's the difference between an emotional escape and a strategic career move. Of course, staying calm doesn't mean tolerating everything. There are situations where you should use formal channels. Serious harassment, discrimination, threats, retaliation, safety concerns, or repeated behavior that violates company policies. When something crosses that line, don't rely only on verbal conversations. Use the appropriate company process. Keep your communication factual. Focus on what happened, when it happened, who was involved, and what impact it had. Avoid exaggeration. Avoid insults. Avoid emotional labels. You don't need to write, "My boss is a horrible psychopath." Write, "On Tuesday, during the team meeting, I was instructed to complete X by Friday. On Wednesday, I was told the instruction had never been given. I have the follow-up communication from Tuesday." Facts are easier to evaluate than accusations. So, if you remember nothing else from this video, remember these 7 principles. Don't chase a toxic boss's approval. Don't give them emotional reactions they can use against you. Document important decisions and expectations. Set boundaries by clarifying priorities. Don't overshare personal information. Don't turn coworkers into your personal support army. And most importantly, always build options outside your current boss, because your career is bigger than one manager. Dream bad boss can make you question your ability. They can make you believe you're not good enough. They can make you feel trapped. But don't confuse a toxic environment with your actual value. Sometimes the problem isn't that you aren't capable. Sometimes you're simply working in an environment that doesn't know how to use your capability. So, don't fight every battle. Don't react to every provocation. Don't let someone else's behavior control your reputation. Stay professional. Stay strategic. Keep records. Build relationships. Build skills. And quietly build options. Because the ultimate goal isn't to defeat your toxic boss. It's to make sure your toxic boss doesn't control your future. If this video helped you understand workplace politics in a different way, subscribe to Farhan Explains Work and Money. Here, we break down the hidden rules of work, money, career growth, office politics, and the strategies people rarely teach you. And remember, you don't always win by fighting back. Sometimes you win by becoming impossible to control.